of Bertie County as a park ranger. She was born in California, and she came this way in the 3rd grade and lived in the Back Bay, Virginia area, which is kind of, I can see where you get some of these wildlife roots from. She went to Virginia Tech and graduated in 2007 with a wildlife science degree. And she moved to North Carolina in 11 and worked with the Merchants Mill Pond. And then she went to the Dismal Swamp area, and she spoke with us about 2 years ago about the Dismal Swamp. And now we're fortunate enough to have with our amazing property that we have in Bertie. And we were both at the Blue Angel show yesterday, so I did not see her.
Blue Angel show. Blue Angel show yesterday.
5,000 or something. It's crazy, but it's such a good all-day show. It's good stuff. Thank you, Katie.
Well, thank you very much for having me here tonight. I'm excited to share Salmon Creek with you all. So it's still kind of a work in progress. I have been there since November 11th of 2024. I spent 11 years at Dismal Swamp before that, so it was kind of a big change. And both myself and my partner left Dismal Swamp within about a week of each other, so my superintendent there was a little unhappy about that because that was like half of the staff left. But he understood the opportunity that I had down here with Salmon Creek. So it's been a learning experience so far. Like, it's really different. It's currently a staff of 1. So if it needs to get done down there, I do it. I do have support from the staff at Merchants Mill Pond State Park. Salmon Creek is currently a subunit of Merchants Mill Pond. So, like, Steve Rogers, the superintendent at Merchants Mill Pond, is also the superintendent of Salmon Creek right now. So if I need to borrow an extra set of hands, I can coordinate and have maintenance staff or whoever come to me and put things when I need it. But on a daily basis, it's mostly just me. Sorry to have to go back and forth here looking for a clicker so I can stay up here, but there is not one at the moment. So, a few quick facts about Salmon Creek. We have about 1,300 acres in Mary Hill, Bertie County, so it's literally like 10 minutes from here. Go across the bridge and take the first left with the flashing light there by the city. The property is out there, so this is the spot right there. I added it to Google Maps when I got down there. So if you put it into Google, it'll tell you 505 Mulberry Road, because that's kind of the parking area, if you will. Unofficially, it should take you there. So we're kind of, I think we should be up in here somewhere, so just cross the bridge and we're right there. So we have about 3.5 to 4 miles of waterfront boundary. So the creek is this little narrow strip there. So we have a good amount of waterfront there, which is a good reason to be out on the boat some. I have boundary that is right on the creek that you can't mark signs unless you're on the boat. So that's been fun and exciting to get some time on the bigger boat. I also enjoy canoeing and kayaking, so we've done some of that out there as well. So the property was gifted to the state of North Carolina in November 2018 by the Coastal Land Trust. So I think I've got some more info on it on another slide, but it was originally going to be developed, and when it came up for sale in 2018, the Coastal Land Trust had to make some quick decisions to get it, and they actually took out a loan to purchase the property, which I guess is something they don't typically do. I think when I read it, that was the first time they had ever taken that step to get a hold of such a good piece of land for conservation. And then they used various grant funds from different organizations. I think they used Parks and Recreation Trust funds, some DOE funding, contributed to it to pay off the loan, and then after the loan was paid off, they transferred it to North Carolina. So since November 18, we've had the main track. So there's actually like 4 or 5 different parcels out there. This main block that they bought first was about 995 acres. And so it's currently designated as a natural area, which is different from a park. So we are Salmon Creek State Natural Area, not state park. So the main difference with that is that the natural area is going to be a little bit more focused on like conservation and habitat and that kind of thing, or the recreation of the parks are a little more focused on. And unfortunately, I can't invite you out to come visit me there yet because we're not open. So it's there, we're working on it, but it's not like you can come have a parking lot and park and walk through the visitor center because there's nothing out there. Alright, so why was it saved? It was originally slated to become Belgrave Harbor, which was going to be a 2,800 home development and a 212 slip marina, and I'm just like, wow, that's a lot of houses to pack into a pretty small area. And so this image I pulled from a document that's the company that was going to develop it back in 2008 was actually when the plans fell apart and the economic downturn happened, was why they abandoned the plan to develop it. And then I guess it never really took off again, and then in 2017 they gave up and put it up for sale. But that was an image of what it was going to be. And it's kind of hard to see what's what, but I'm like, I just see a lot of dense houses and roads and things like that in there. So I personally am really glad that they were able to keep that from happening. We do need some houses, but that's a lot of houses to pack into a pretty small space and a lot of really cool stuff out there that we wouldn't be able to see otherwise. Alright, so why is it special? I chose 3 reasons to elaborate on a little bit more. So it has a lot of cultural significance, which I'll go into a little bit more detail on. It has some unique habitat, like this picture here. And then it's also an outdoor recreation opportunity for Bertie County and surrounding communities. Alright, so what's there right now? Pretty much nothing except land. No facilities or formal parking. There is a boat ramp and an old dock, which I learned last week from my superintendent was actually a prototype that the developers had put in preparation for building the homes in the marina out there. So it's a pretty substantial dock, and I'm hoping that maybe we can make some repairs to it since we do have a boat that's going to be down there for accessing the creek, but we'll see what happens. And there are some old logging trails and paths. One of the later parcels, the one that adjoins Bertie Beach, is about 300 acres, and that one was recently logged and belonged to the timber company. So there's some old paths that it's kind of like the beginnings of the trail system. There are trails you can go out, like start here, make a loop, and come back where you started from. Which after all my years at Dismal Swamp, I have a fixation with looping trails. If you've ever walked Dismal Swamp trails, you know that none of them loop. You go out and you come back. And so my 2 cents for our development out here at Salmon Creek is like, please make trails. So we do have several of our signs posted around so that anyone who comes by will know that it's sign says state park, state natural area. I just about a month ago got an office in Windsor. So I'm in near the Bertie County Library and the extension offices. I'm there with extensions. So yeah, I had nothing except my truck for an office. I have a quarter, I think about it. I have a quarter at the break room in Merchant's Mill Pond. But I wasn't there very often, so I was mostly like an email on my phone, and then if it rained, I'd go to the Mill Pond and catch up all my computer stuff. So I'm pretty excited to finally have the office space. Now I have a little bit of storage for things that I don't want to keep in the truck, like field guides, animal furs, and things like that. So we're getting there one step at a time. Right, so that's the boat ramp there. So we learned in July that the boat ramp is large enough to accommodate the state park's big canoes that we have. If you're not familiar with them, we have 4 now 30-foot, 14-passenger big canoes. They weigh like 400 pounds a piece. They're really awesome though because you can get an entire class of school children out in the 2 boats. And they are wonderful for programs. So we had the Pride of Bertie had a Young Environmentalist Academy summer camp program over the summer, and those students were able to come out to do a big canoe program. So And it's kind of hard to see over here, this little dock. If you see it in person, it's wavy like this, and it does not look super sturdy, but I checked it out ahead of time with a coworker from Dismal Swamp, and he's a lot bigger and heavier than me. He jumped all over it and stomped on it. It's pretty solid. So we made it work. And it was a pleasant change. The big canoe team and I have worked together many times at Dismal Swamp. And at Dismal Swamp, you have to muscle these canoes off the trailer and carry them down to the canal. So she got here and I said, look at this, you can back it down the ramp. And it was very nice and much easier. And then this image was taken in winter, obviously, because when I was out checking boundaries. So this is just south, well, it might be east of Bertie Beach. So if you walk from Bertie Beach, I don't know that you can without waders and probably a little bit wet, but if you continue past Bertie Beach out toward the Albemarle Sound, this stretch of beach is part of the natural area. And so I had to put my boots on to walk out there and check boundary signs, and some of them had fallen down, trees in the original cliffs, which I'll talk about a little bit more in these slides also. This spot here is one of my favorite locations at the natural area. This is where the mouth of the creek meets the Chowan River. So over on this side is Avoca, so there's houses over there. And this is what I call our beach. It's a little bit smaller than Bertie Beach, and it doesn't really have as much sand or an area to set up or anything. But when we acquired the property, there's actually been a house down there, so there's electricity run all the way out to the end of that. It's not active right now, but it's there. And then if you continue down this way and around the curve, that's where that larger dock is. And then this is the main part of the 995-acre tract, which is obviously wide open. So again, this was a winter photo, so there's nothing out there right now. You can come by and see it today. There's a field of soybeans there. We are ultimately going to reestablish probably grasses, maybe native grasses. We haven't really worked all of this out yet, but at the moment we don't have we're going to do this, plant this on this day and move forward with it. So in the meantime, we leased it back to the farmers. So there are soybeans out there for now, and that keeps undesirable things like gum trees from coming in and taking over and creating complications down the road when we are ready to do something else with it. Alright, so that's the corner of the dock. So again, this is the mouth of the creek looking out to the sound. This photo is one that I pulled from the Coastal Land Trust site because I was looking through my pictures and apparently I haven't taken any of the dock yet. So they had that nice one there. And then this is what I call the first trail. Nothing has official names yet, so I refer to them. That's what I like to call them. So I know what I'm talking about, and I have to explain sometimes to other folks which one I mean. So as you're coming down Baldgray Road, this trail is going to be on the right side as you head out toward the houses at the end. And so that's one of those old roads that goes in, and right now it just goes in about a half a mile. And that's it. All right, so the cultural significance has a couple different aspects. The Thomas Pollock home site is one of them. Then we have Site X, which is related to the Lost Colony, which is everyone familiar with the story of the Lost Colony? Right. Then we also have Metaquan, which is a Native American village, and then the shad and herring fishery. So this photo here, this is the beach down here that I had in the earlier picture, and this is Site X. And if you didn't know where Site X was, and I wasn't there to say this is it, you probably wouldn't recognize it because there's nothing really to see there anymore. But we'll get to Site X in a little bit more detail in just a moment. But the Thomas Pollock home site was the one that I had listed first. So he was a colonial governor from the early 1700s. He was actually born in Scotland, and his plantation here in Bertie County was called Baldgray after his ancestral homestead in Scotland. So when I discovered that, I was like, so that's why they call it Waldraker. When I first got down there, I wasn't even 100% sure of the correct pronunciation of it. Is it Valbra? Yeah, but I have since learned that it is Waldraker. And the home site itself, I have not been able to locate yet. That's one of the things on my to-do list. We have a rough idea of where it might be, but we have not located the site itself. So I have kind of suspended that search for the summer. Once we get into winter and it's safer to walk in the woods without getting eaten by chiggers and having to worry about stepping on rattlesnakes and copperheads, I will resume my search to see if I can figure out where this homestead is.
Has any archaeological work been done there already?
Yes. That, I think, is my next slide. Yep, there we go. So, there has been some work done at Site X by the First Colony Foundation with some funding from the town of Windsor in Bertie County. So, this photo, that's that same site that was on the 2 slides ago, I think, in the field, right? So you wouldn't recognize it now. So they did actually go down and dig and see what they could find. So they used some ground penetrating radar to try to guide where to dig and excavate, and they found artifacts. I am not an archaeological expert, but they were able to date the origin of like the pottery shards, and I think they found like shoelace parts and different things that they were able to isolate to very particular eras. So the artifacts that they found predated when they were absolutely sure that English colonists were there, which was what led them to believe that some of the lost colonists might have ended up there.
How did they find this in the first place, this location?
There were a few clues, and I've done some reading about this as well. The Bertie Library has a pretty good section of county history, and in that section I found a book written by an author who maintained that all of this is irrelevant and that's not where the lost colonists ended up. He's convinced they all went to Hatteras, but the First Colony makes a pretty convincing case that this could be where they went. And I think there's one of my next things. How do they know to look there? So this is an old John White map. So John White was the one who brought the lost colonists. They weren't lost then, but he brought the colonists over to establish that colony that they began on Roanoke Island, and then that was in 1587. And he went back to England for supplies and was going to come straight back, and things happened, wars and such, and it ended up being like 3 years before he came back. And so when he came back, there was no one there, and you probably heard about the CRO carved in the post for the treaty and the Croatoan, and one of those were about the only clues that the colonists had left. And then, I don't remember exactly what year it was that they looked closer at this map. So this was a map that John White had made. So this area here is where the natural area is. And you can see the little outline there, that was a patch that was put on the map. So previously they hadn't been able to see what was under it. And I think like X-ray or backlighting or some kind of technology that they used to look at the map again. And under this patch is a symbol that they used to indicate fort. And so that made them think that maybe that could have been a destination. And at one point in time, John White and his colonists had discussed moving 50 miles into the Main. And this site is about 55 miles from Ranger Island. So those clues kind of lend some credence to that theory that could be where they went. But they don't think that all of the lost colonists necessarily went there. It could have just been a few of them. But the evidence seems to suggest that maybe they were there. And I guess we'll never know, which is kind of what makes the mystery neat, in my opinion, is that it's fascinating to speculate and wonder, and we find facts that suggest this, and then facts that suggest otherwise. Maybe someday we'll sort it out. Right? And then one of the other possible supporting facts for the lost colonists being at Site X was American village. The Chowanok people, who were Algonquian Indians, would have lived there, and they may have assisted the lost colonists, and so that was the tribe that was friendly to the English back then, and so that kind of also supported the idea that maybe they went there to live near friendly natives for help and support. And so on the hill, well, there's soybeans growing there right now, but on this hill where this village was, you can walk around and just find pottery shards, arrowheads sometimes. So I went and walked around. You're welcome to come up and look at all of these when we're done. So these are a few things that I picked up out of that field this afternoon. Things that don't belong, like oyster shells. This one, I'm not sure how old it could be. It's a rock. It doesn't belong. This one, I'm reasonably confident is in fact a piece of pottery. Of course, when I was out there a few weeks ago, we were picking things up all over the place, and I went out today to bring something, and I was having trouble finding things, but this one I think is a pottery piece. So this one may be another oyster shell, or it could be a little sliver of pottery. So that's just kind of all over out there. Right, and then the shad and the herring fishery is something that I'm still in the process of learning a little bit more about. Haven't been at Salmon Creek long enough to know quite as much as I did about this swamp after 11 years, but I'm working on it a little bit here and there. And in looking for this picture to add to this slide, I stumbled across a website that I'm going to spend a little bit more time reading further. It's called the Sally'sFamilyPlace.com. And it looks like a Bertie resident with long family ties to the area and had a lot of old pictures and documents. I didn't really have time to read everything in great detail this afternoon, but I'll save it and have it again off during the day. But, so, there used to be a lot of shad and herring out there, and the fishery has been closed down since 2007 because of declining populations. One of the contributing factors, not necessarily the only reason, but one thing that caused that was overfishing, because there were a lot of fish harvested from Salmon Creek back in the day. So originally Native Americans would have fished there as well, and then later on the colonists and a lot of enslaved folks and free African Americans were actually the main labor force for the herring fishery historically. And so the commercial fishery, I learned used seine nets pretty much exclusively, and that they could be, I think I read miles long, and that boggles my mind to think about how you would pull in a seine net that's miles long, but I guess they managed it. And they were able to catch upwards of 100,000 fish at a time. So they just haul the nets in and then clean up and sell and eat all the fish and then go back and do it again. So I understand it was pretty arduous work. But we had the Perry Winds Fish Company in Coleraine that was once the largest freshwater herring fishery in the world. And so again, these are things I'm still learning a little bit more about, so I can't give a whole lot of detail, but I've also been trying to learn a little bit more about the Capehart family of Avoca, which is that other side of the mouth of Salmon Creek. So Avoca, I read, came from both Irish and possibly Native American terms, which is either gathering place or like a joining of the waters, is what that translates to. The area there at Salmon Creek is kind of like a highway for the waterways, if you will. You've got the Chowan River, Salmon Creek, the Albemarle Sound in there, so easy access for a lot of things. And so the Capehart family was on the other side of Salmon Creek over there in Boca and owned a lot of plantation land and also was involved in the herring fishery. So we might be back in a few years and maybe I'll have a little bit more to say on both of those. I'm working on it. But this image here I thought was kind of neat. I read on this website that they did a lot of the fishing at night. I'm not entirely sure why, if it's easier to catch them at night or haul them in. But I thought this image was kind of neat, showing you can see the same net there with the bottom as they're hauling in. And I don't know how many shad or herring we'll catch, list for educational supplies to have for Salmon Creek. I would like to get a seine net to be able to see what we can catch in the creek with school kids in the future. The fish I see most often now is the jumping mullet. No shortage of them. Alright, so then we have a lot of different unique habitat out here. So there are a number of ravines that would have been formed by ancient streams. So when the sea level was different than what it is now, the streams would have flowed faster than what they do today. And that increased water speed would have eroded. It's kind of hard to see that this slopes down. I was trying to get good pictures that would really capture the topography of it. You can walk on the county park, has a trail that takes you right past one of these ravines. We have several that are like that on state property as well, but the one at Bertie Beach is pretty easy to get to. And so they have a panel even that talks about, everybody says coastal North Carolina is really flat. So why are you going up and down all these hills? And this is why, from these ancient streams that carved out these ravines, and then after the sea level changed a little bit, the stream slowed down and sort of stabilized, and then vegetation came in to anchor the sides, and now we've got these kind of woody parks out there. And then this is our beach cliff. So there's something called the Talbot Terrace, which is in between the two scarps, the Surrey Scarp and the Suffolk Scarp. The Suffolk Scarp, I remember from my Dismal Swamp days, it was originally an ancient sand dune, and the ocean was a lot further inland than what it is now. And so this Talbot Terrace is kind of like a step in between those. And so these cliffs have formed, and they create the black sand that you can see on the beach, more so on Bertie Beach than on the natural area. And so, as you can see, there's a lot of erosion happening here, which we usually think of as being a negative thing. And so we are losing, trees will come down as their roots lose soil to support them. But these cliffs is also what keeps the beach nourished and provides the sand that we have on the beaches out there. So that's kind of unique as well. And then there's a lot of bottomland swamp. There are a lot of swampy areas on Salmon Creek. I have done a fair amount of traipsing through the woods, doing boundary work and what have you. And there are some places that I have learned the hard way in a couple instances that you should not go through without at least rough boots and probably chest waders. I ended up with wet feet a couple of times.
Do you know what that yellow layer is? See the yellow
This
layer?
one, I am not 100% sure. It's just different like minerals, different types of soil, and probably different eras. And the person I could probably call him and talk to him. I don't know if you've ever heard of Dr. Stanley Riggs. He's pretty instrumental in promoting preservation of this area. And I'm trying to remember, he told me a lot of really cool facts about this. So I'm struggling to remember all of the info that he shared, but he could tell you pretty much anything you might want to know about it. Yeah, that's just like different layers of soil in different time periods. And then, like I said, there are minerals and out there as well. Alright, and then the outdoor recreation opportunity. So this here is Bertie Beach. That's the picnic shelter that we have over there. It is the only public beach access in the county of Bertie, so that makes it kind of special. Okay, so they have hiking trails over there. Someday we might have some of the natural areas. In the meantime, you can go walk there. You can canoe and kayak from the beach. They've got camping in the works. They have restrooms and showers. Picnic pavilion there, and then some of the future plans include possibly an environmental education center and an outdoor amphitheater there. So they have some really big plans for Bertie Beach. So what they do with Bertie Beach is probably going to influence what we do with the state natural area as well, because we want to try to complement what they're doing there versus compete with them. So
Are they right next door?
literally right next door, like my boundary is you can step across from the natural area to the county park.
How busy is it?
Their parcel is, I think, about 130 acres, roughly.
I mean, how busy is it in terms of the people that come there?
On a warm day in the summer, they have a pretty good crowd on the beach that you can walk down and it's hard to find a place. I was there, popped over this morning for a few minutes and there was like one car there, so it's
Yeah.
I think it depends if the kids are in school or not.
The walk we did with you on New Year's Day, was that the, did we go into the area that you're in charge of when we did that walk?
We did not.
Okay,
Yeah, we were entirely on the county park,
okay.
mainly because they have restrooms.
Yeah.
I don't, so that kind of complicates doing things at the natural area right now, especially with school kids and even most adults. You can learn about leaving your trace in the woods, but most people kind of like to have the restroom. All right, so what's going on out at Salmon Creek right now, since there's no facilities and no visitors to worry about? So we are working on documenting species. So I popped into NRID this afternoon to see what our current totals are, and I get really excited when I find something new that hasn't been put in before. So we have 711 species so far, which is pretty good, but by comparison, Dismal Swamp has, I think, 2,300 and some, and Merchant's Mill Pond has over 3,500. So I've got some work to do to catch up. And I'm sure stuff is out there, it's just a question of figuring out what all of it is. So this is our current totals here. So we've got vascular plants, 278, so that's going to be like your trees and the crown beard and the goldenrod and the plants we see. 206 insect species, which are then broken down by their group. So Lepidoptera is going to be your moths and butterflies, so 22 moth species, 47 butterfly species. Audinata is your dragonflies. There are like literally thousands of dragonflies out there in the summer. It's mind blowing how many there are. You look around and it's just like dragonflies everywhere. And so I've figured out what our most common ones are and gotten reasonably good at photographing different photograph critters like dragonflies that don't let us sit still very long. Don't think I added any new dragonfly species this year. I did get a few new butterfly species and I've got a couple pictures of them down the line. About 109 bird species so far. I'm sure there's probably more than that. I see osprey, bald eagles, we have a lot of summer tanagers, tons of wild turkey.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of turkey. I'm trying to think what else is common. Affiliated woodpeckers, I hear a lot of those. Yellow-billed cuckoos. Birds is another one that's really hard to photograph. A lot of the birds I put in, like, well, I heard one all over there. I did get a picture of a prothonotary warbler the other day, though. And then the warbler just landed on a post, and then the prothonotary landed, and he flew away. And as soon as he flew away, then I think it was a yellow-throated warbler came in like right after it was landed, like 2 seconds. I took the phone and I went to click the button. But I still saw it, so that was exciting. We've got 39 spider species so far. I've been working on identifying harvestmen lately because it turns out there are quite a few different kinds of harvestmen out there. Those are the daddy long-leg spiders. I think I've found 5 different species of them just in the last 2 weeks. Yes.
Do you know what spiders jump? We seem to have a lot of jumping spiders.
We do have like an entire group of spiders that are jumping spiders, and there's numerous different species within that group, like the little furry kind of ones.
I don't make a quiz.
They're probably furry. Yeah. I remember specifically a bull jumping spider I found at Dismal Swamp once, and they do kind of they'll run and jump.
What about ticks?
There are far fewer ticks at Salmon Creek than there were in Dismal Swamp, so I'm grateful for that. I think the entire summer at Salmon Creek I got probably fewer than half a dozen ticks. At Dismal Swamp, if I went outside and
Good.
that has been kind of a nice change.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea why it's so different?
I don't know why the swamp is such a hot spot for the ticks. It always has been. There is good tick habitat at Salmon Creek, but they just don't seem to be present in the same numbers. There are chiggers, unfortunately. Got a few of those. And fire ants that come out in a few slides. So fire ants is what is currently causing my teeth itching right now, but working on it.
Turkeys probably eat a lot of ticks.
It doesn't seem to help in the swamp though. We have turkey in the swamp as well, but
Doesn't help.
doesn't really put a dent in. I don't know why. There are some places in the swamp where like I literally would not touch the ground in the summer because the ticks were so bad. We did a star party in April on a trail that probably should have stayed off of that time of year. That night I had 26 ticks.
Ooh.
So that's probably been one of the nicest differences between the two places so far. Don't miss the ticks. There are a lot of things I miss about the swamp, and that is not one of them. Let's see. We've got 21 mammal species. I brought some of the furs along. And as I was driving up here, I realized that one of the things I meant to put on the slideshow for you to see was some of the trail cam pictures of the critters I've gotten, and I forgot. So I can show you afterwards if you're interested in some of the entertaining bear pictures I've gotten. There's a tree that this one particular bear likes to scratch his head on. It's kind of funny. I have some cute pictures of him. He found a camera one afternoon and came over and he's looking like this. I got a red fox back in the fall, early winter. They were on the farm field side, and that one was a new species for Salmon Creek, so I was really excited about that. And also because I don't typically see a lot of foxes at all, especially red foxes, so it was pretty neat to see him, especially the one that ran across with something in his mouth. I have yet to figure out what it is. You can zoom in and then it gets blurry. He's got like a young turkey or something in his mouth and he's carrying it in the picture.
Do you see many coyotes?
I think I've seen one on the camera so far. So they are out there, but
What was the
anecdotally,
question? What was that question?
he wanted to know if I see a lot of coyotes.
Okay.
Anecdotally, not super common. But again, we don't have any firm studies of population numbers to say there are X number of this critter out there either.
What
Just see,
about feral pigs? I've read that they're pretty high in Tawana at least.
I have not seen any or evidence of them over there. Cross my fingers and hope it stays that way. We were talking about Back Bay earlier, and you probably know Back Bay had a huge problem with the feral hogs for a long time. And they're difficult to eradicate, and I think they ended up employing the hunters from planes to take them out, which rubs some folks the wrong way, but they're incredibly destructive critters. So far, none of those.
so feral hogs, these are hogs that were domestic that went out into the wild, is that? Or are they just wild hogs?
I think originally they might have been domesticated like years and years ago, and the ones that are out there now are basically just wild because they're so far removed from being domesticated. But never saw any in the swamp either, so hopefully they'll stay away. Let's see. 17 species of reptiles so far. So most of the turtles you would expect to see, a lot of different snakes. I saw my first timber rattlesnake out there maybe a month and a half ago or so. Well, it wasn't too long ago that I finally saw a rattlesnake. I was super excited. So there's a lot of rattlesnakes out there. Didn't see any. And I was leaving one afternoon. It was kind of late, and I glanced to my right as I was turning out, and I saw something in the road. I was like, that looks kind of like a snake. And I almost kept on going because I was tired and I wanted to go home. I was like, no, I'm going to go see what it is. And I went and looked, and sure enough, it was a big old rattlesnake. So I'm really glad I went to look. Took some pictures, took some video.
Yeah.
Upset him enough to make him rattle at me just a little bit. And then he went off into the soybeans, and I put him on the bridge the next day. We've got 16 fungus species so far. That's one I'm trying to work on expanding my knowledge a little bit. There are some really cool mushrooms out there, and the main thing I've learned is that mushrooms are very difficult to identify. So I am field guides are not particularly helpful. I did find an app called Picture Mushroom that I've had a little bit of success with. You take pictures of all sides, top and bottom of the mushroom, and it gives you different suggestions. So sometimes it's helpful just to be able to narrow it down to try to figure out what you're looking at. So I actually brought one of my mushrooms. This one smells really neat. So I think this one is a Brucella. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. I don't know. It's a little shriveled up now, but I took pictures of it before it did, so I can work on a more definitive item. So I did taste this one. I read that the nibble and spit test is how you're supposed to test mushrooms for flavor, because some of them have a bitter taste, and that's a way to ID a specific species. But they don't swallow it just in case, and you nibble it to get the flavor and then spit it out. This one actually tasted pretty good. Wasn't totally sure what it was though, so I was like, I'm not gonna eat it. Just to make sure. Then we got amphibians, fish, lichens, crustaceans, things we don't see quite as much of down there at the bottom. But hopefully I'll be able to build up those numbers a little bit more as I poke around and come across interesting things. 2 or 3 weeks ago, I found an eastern blood-sucking cone rose. I've never seen one of those before, and I had to take a picture and ask Seek and Google for help to identify it. That one turned out to be a new species for Salmon too, so I was like, I learned one, got a new one for the list. So insects would probably be the easiest way to increase those numbers, because there are a lot of those. There are a lot of gnats too. And mayflies. Mayfly numbers probably rival dragonfly numbers. They were. Alright, so some other things that are going on right now. Back in December of last year, we participated in the Winter Christmas Parade. So we did a little float for a couple folks from the Mill Pond came out with me to do that one. And that's a photo from our first day hike, which you're probably in there somewhere. That was awesome.
Yeah.
So, and then this is a picture that a friend of mine took from the statewide star party that was held in April. So that was also at Bertie Beach, which turned out to be a really good place to see stars with that wide open space. We're far enough from places that have light that you have a pretty good view of the night sky. And I had a gentleman who volunteered, and I think he was actually from Evanston, who brought his telescope over to have set up for us that night, so folks could see stars, and I think we were able to see the moon a little bit. I brought some telescopes from the park, but they're a little, I'm not that good with telescopes, so we saw a few things. But it's a great place to look at the sky. And then the Carolinas Butterfly Monitoring Program was something I was first introduced to at Business Swamp, and one of the, not the very first thing, but one of the earlier things I wanted to do at Salmon Creek was to get butterfly survey events set up. So this program tracks butterfly populations across both of the Carolinas. I'm just kind of monitoring population trends, because you don't know what your numbers are doing, you don't really know what you need to do to conserve or change to help them not go extinct. And so we have 2 routes set up at Salmon Creek, and 47 different species of butterflies again so far. So these 2 over here are among the most common species that we have. So this is a variegated fritillary and an American lady. I also see a lot of common buckeyes and sleepy orange, which are little yellow-orange butterflies. They've been everywhere this year. And I don't know if I'm noticing them more because I see so many out there. I'll be driving home or through the county and I'm like, there's another one. I don't know if you get them here in Evanston, but they're common out there. And then we have a couple of our less common butterflies here. This one is called a Carolina roadside skipper. So it's a pretty small, nondescript butterfly. Obviously, it's not really fancy or flashy color-wise. He's small, a lot smaller than the fritillary. And that one, when I sent it to the director of the Carolina Butterfly Monitoring Program for help with ID, he got real excited when he saw that. one route, fewer on the other route, so the satyrs favor the forest environment. The one route goes around the farm fields and the open space along the edge of the woods, and then the other route goes through the forest. We wanted to try to get kind of a balance of the habitat types to see what likes it where. And this was another one when I sent him this one, and I said, I don't know what this one is. He said, oh, that's a gem satyr, so I guess they're not super common either, so he was excited about that one. And that one ended up being a new species, so that was the first one that had been seen out there. And then the other day, I finally was able to get a picture of a monarch, and I've been seeing them around, and then when I finally sat still long enough for me to get a halfway decent picture of it. And then we have the box turtle connection, which was something else that I did at Dismal Swamp that I wanted to get up and running at Salmon Creek. So this is just a North Carolina statewide initiative between Wildlife Resources and NC State. And so the goal is to have a 100-year project. So hopefully I'll be able to find someone to take over this after me, because I'm not going to be there. I think they've got 15 years down with this project so far, but in any case, I'm still not going to be there by the time we get to But I'm doing my best to get what data I can. So I got Salmon Creek established as a site in March of this year. And I found 17 turtles total in 2025. I was able to get data recorded for 16 of them. This guy here escaped before I could get his data. I put him in the cup holder and was carrying him back to the truck, and then I looked down and he was gone. No data on him. I have these two over here. I put them up because this one, she was turtle ABK, and she was actually originally found in the middle of Salmon Creek by a lady and her husband who lived in one of the houses on the other side of the creek, and they said she was just swimming in circles.
We know her.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Yep, so anyways, that's the turtle that she found. She carried her to Wild Hearts Rehab run by a lady named Brandy up in South Mills. And I didn't know about that turtle until I found this turtle a few weeks later. I think that was an old injury when I found her, but I took a picture of it and I sent it to Wild Hearts Rehab and I said, what do you think? I said, it looks to me like it's healing. And she says, well, I don't know, it might be good to bring her. So I carried her up to Brandy in South Mills, and she actually still has this turtle. I think she's ABJ. She's a number or two ahead of this turtle. And so she ended up trying to clean this wound, and I think she finally decided she thinks that it is abscessed and then healed over. And so it had a lot of debris and pus in it, so she's been working to clean it out. And she told me a few weeks ago she thinks that this turtle will probably be ready to go back maybe around the beginning of October. So we'll take her back. And this was a photo of the release day for ABK. When I contacted her about this turtle, she said, oh, I have another one that came from that area. And I said, let me know when she's ready to go back and I'll carry her back. So we swapped turtles and I carried that turtle back and released it for her. So of course, we don't have enough data yet to have a population estimate for the turtles at Salmon Creek yet. But it seems like there's a pretty good number of them. I think once I have maybe 2 or 3 years worth of data, they might be able to plug the numbers into the equation and have a better idea how many there actually are. Great. Another neat thing that we have out there is an active fall eagle nest. So there it is. Sorry, it's kind of hard to see this one. That's one of the adults that we saw on the creek a few days ago. And then it's a little hard to, they looked a little bigger on the computer screen and they're a little blurry. But right here in the center of the tree, there's a really, really massive eagle nest. And as far as we know, they fledged 1 chick this year. And so our natural resources staff has been out to kind of check on them and see what was going on. And we talked afterward and he said, not mow about 500 feet from the nest. Mom and Dad were kind of protecting from their chick and they got a little upset and agitated if we got too close. So I gave them a good long time and then finally ventured back there and looked up and I didn't see anything in the nest. So I'm hoping optimistically that the chick was able to successfully fledge and add another eagle to the population.
Do they reuse their nests?
They do. So there's that one, and then I actually found another one. I don't know if it's an older one, a different pair. So there's two nests out there. The other one is a little bit smaller, and then this is the one that they're actively using right now. Alright, so one of my big projects that I spend a fair amount of time on is removing invasive species. There's a lot of them.
Katie, I hate to say something, but we kind of need to.
Sorry.
This is so interesting. I hate to stop you.
So our invasive species are mostly plants and they're largely restricted to the edges of the farm fields. So that's good. They're not widespread. We have Japanese fieldgrass. So these are just some of the most common ones. This is a tree called Chinaberry. Fire ants, a lot of them. I treat them, and then 2 days later they pop up 3 feet away. I'll get them eventually. And then this one is Chinese privet, which is my arch nemesis. Scan this stuff. So there's some dead privet here. It's a little hard to see in the light here. And then some live privet there. So privet is probably the most pervasive one that we really like. Prescribed fire is something else that we are hopefully going to be doing this fall. So we use prescribed fire to, it can help with controlling invasive species, it can reduce the buildup of fuel, and thereby help prevent a more major fire. And of course we have some special considerations because of the eagle nest and the cultural resources. The block that we're hoping to burn this fall is the one that includes the eagle nest. We might have to put some extra dozer lines around it. Alright, so what's next for us? Probably modest development for passive recreation, which would be like canoeing, kayaking, hiking. We'll work on habitat restoration. I'll probably keep doing my occasional special events. Unfortunately, there's no timeline right now, so I don't really know what we're going to do or when we're going to do it. But down the line, I think it'll look.
Who develops the plans?
We have a lot of different folks at the state level who are involved in that. We have trail planners and natural resource experts. And probably some more I'm forgetting. There's a lot of folks who play a role in it. So I think one of our next steps is going to be to develop a general management plan for the natural area and that'll kind of help guide what we do going forward. This is the witness tree or the century tree. Something else I'm trying to learn more about. Been there for a very long time. I met a gentleman a few weeks ago who told me he grew up in the cottages back when Belgrade was a dirt road and had a gate. And he said this tree was there when he was young. So that's pretty cool. There's supposed to be a cemetery around the base of it. There are no gravestones, so I don't know who might be buried there. But the survey says there is. So maybe I'll be able to figure that out someday too. That's a picture I took pretty morning last fall.
Can you run through what the different crops are real quickly since we're out of them?
I have a coyote, a gray fox, a raccoon, a beaver, and a deer. These are furs that I brought with me from Dismal because they were extras. But these are animals that you would find at Salmon Creek as well. This is an antler shed I picked up out of the woods just the other day over by Salmon Creek. A slider. So this one is not from Salmon Creek. It was given to me by a friend, but we do have sliders. I found a very small one last week. And picked this up this afternoon, wild turkey feathers, since there are so many of them. And this I brought just as an example of some of the random interesting things I find in the woods. Unfortunately, I find a lot of liquor bottles and a lot of and trash. I pulled out tires, old seats, metal, all kinds of random stuff. And then I found this thing and I was like, I don't know what it is. I don't know how old it is, but it looks kind of cool, so I hung on to it. Thank you.
Okay, the mystery of the name Salmon Creek.
Oh, I completely forgot to put that in my show. So, great question. I wish I had a good answer for you, but the truth is, nobody knows.
Maybe Paul brought it from Scotland with him.
Well, the best theory I've been able to come up with is that it's probably an old family name. I found a reference to it as Salmon Creek on a map that was dated 1854, I think. So it's been Salmon Creek for a very, very long time. So I will work on that too. Try to have a better answer someday.
Katie, you mentioned liquor, and I have to add the story, it's so interesting. In the seventies, actually in 1972, there was an 18-ounce officer raid in Mary Hill. When you were coming down Highway 17, you pass Salmon Creek, you see the little, you could go down there and launch boat, you know, I've picked up herring down there. Anyway, there was a trailer, and there's a picture of it, you can see it. There's a trailer up on the slight hill, and it had a swing set and a dog, and it looked like 1970 America. And behind the trailer and underneath the trailer was a very sophisticated moonshine setup.
Yeah.
Moonshine.
4,500 gallon tanks in operation, producing 500 gallons of liquor a day.
Yeah.
And the government lost almost $2 million in revenue.
Yeah.
It was in operation for a year and a half. I personally own a piece of the moonshine still because my dad was a bold entrepreneur. Katie, I also have to tell you, I'll share a story about Cape Parks Fishery. My grandmother wrote me a story when I was very young about them bringing in like 200,000 herring at the same time.
Yeah.
I saw all kinds of numbers. I saw everything from 1 to 500,000 at a time.
It's crazy. And in the subject of Site X, I wrote a book in 2018, In Pursuit of Dorothy, spelled with an I-E on the end. It's in this library, it's in boutiques on Amazon, In Pursuit of Dorothy. But it brings up Site X and it gives more evidence of why we believe that. So, thank you, Katie.
Thank you so much.